It started like any other day for Margaret, a retired school teacher who loved her morning walks and quiet evenings with a good book. But over the past few weeks, something felt off. She noticed a strange, creeping fatigue that clung to her no matter how much she rested. Simple chores left her breathless. At night, she tossed and turned, waking with a racing heart and a sense of dread she couldn't explain. Margaret chalked it up to aging, maybe even stress. After all, who hasn't felt tired or anxious once in a while? But deep down, something told her this was different. She ignored the tight sensation that occasionally bubbled in her chest, the way her jaw sometimes ached for no reason, and that uncomfortable pressure after meals she mistook for heartburn. Even the moments of lightheadedness, the unexplained shortness of breath while climbing stairs, she brushed them all aside. It's nothing serious, she told herself. Then one evening, as she stood to make dinner, the dizziness hit again. This time, stronger. Her knees buckled. That was when her daughter insisted she see a doctor. The truth shocked them both. Margaret had been walking around with warning signs of an impending heart attack for nearly a month. At Elderly Life, we want to make sure no one misses the signs their body may be desperately trying to send. Margaret's story isn't rare. Millions of people ignore early symptoms, only realizing too late that a silent storm had been brewing inside them all along. What if the signs of a heart attack don't start with crushing pain, but instead with something as simple as fatigue, disturbed sleep, or an odd feeling in your neck? Your body whispers before it screams. Are you listening? Number 1. Indigestion or heartburn. Frank had always prided himself on his iron stomach. Spicy food? No problem. Late night snacks? Bring it on. So when he began feeling a burning sensation in his chest after dinner, he didn't think twice. Just a little heartburn, he told his wife, reaching for the antacids. But this time it was different. The burning came back the next night and the next. Sometimes it showed up even after a light meal. Other times it hit him out of nowhere. There were moments when it felt less like digestion and more like pressure, spreading across his chest like something heavy was sitting on him. Still, he brushed it off. What Frank didn't know was that this wasn't heartburn at all. It was his heart, sending quiet warnings that it was struggling to get enough blood. The burning sensation he mistook for indigestion was actually a signal of restricted blood flow, a sign that oxygen wasn't reaching his heart the way it should. The heart and stomach share nerve pathways, which means when the heart is in distress, the brain can misread it as a digestive problem. That's why this kind of discomfort is so easy to ignore, especially in older adults, women, or people with diabetes, where heart symptoms often appear in subtle, misleading ways. Had Frank known that indigestion-like pain, especially when paired with nausea, cold sweats, dizziness, or pain radiating to the jaw or arms, could be a red flag, he might have acted sooner. At Elderly Life, we believe your body whispers before it screams. The trick is knowing when to listen. Number 2. Unusual fatigue. Clara had always been full of life. At 72, she still baked cookies for the neighborhood kids and walked her dog every morning without fail. But over the last few weeks, something had changed. She'd wake up feeling like she hadn't slept at all. Even making the bed left her winded. Carrying groceries felt like lifting weights. It's just getting older, she told herself. Maybe I'm doing too much. But no amount of rest helped. No nap recharged her. The exhaustion clung to her like a fog, heavy and relentless. She started skipping her walks, stopped baking. Everything felt like too much effort. And yet she wasn't sick. No fever, no cold, just tired. What Clara didn't know was that this kind of deep, persistent fatigue wasn't just a sign of aging. It was a warning from her heart. When the heart isn't pumping blood efficiently, oxygen can't reach the muscles and brain the way it should. The body shifts into survival mode, redirecting blood to vital organs and leaving the arms and legs feeling heavy and weak. That's why even small tasks can feel like a mountain to climb. Many heart attack survivors later recall feeling this kind of exhaustion for weeks before their episode. But they brushed it off, just like Clara. At Elderly Life, we want you to know, if you're feeling drained for no clear reason, and rest doesn't help, don't ignore it, especially if the fatigue worsens over time or is paired with dizziness, shortness of breath, or other subtle symptoms. Sometimes the body doesn't shout. Sometimes it simply slows down, begging you to notice. Number 3. Sleep disturbances. Every night, George climbed into bed hoping for rest, but sleep rarely came. He'd lie there for hours, exhausted but wide awake. When he finally drifted off, it didn't last. He would jolt awake for no reason, sometimes gasping for air, heart pounding in the dark. "I guess it's just part of getting old," he sighed, blaming stress, caffeine, or maybe his stiff mattress. But no matter what he tried, earplugs, warm milk, even sleep aids, nothing worked. Each morning, he woke up more tired than before, dragging himself through the day in a fog of exhaustion. There were no nightmares, no racing thoughts, just a body that refused to rest. What George didn't know was that his sleep troubles weren't random. They were signs, early, quiet signs, that his heart was under strain. When the heart isn't functioning well, it affects the entire body, including the way we sleep. Blood pressure and oxygen levels fluctuate through the night, and when the heart struggles to keep up, the brain steps in, triggering brief awakenings, shallow breathing, and restlessness. It's a cycle that robs the body of true rest. In some cases, this condition, called nocturnal hypoxia, causes oxygen levels to drop dangerously low while sleeping. Other times, the heart's stress activates the nervous system, releasing adrenaline and keeping the body on high alert, even in the stillness of night. At Elderly Life, we've seen how sleep disturbances can be a subtle but powerful warning. They don't always point to anxiety or insomnia. Sometimes they point to the heart. So if you find yourself tossing and turning, waking up gasping, or feeling like you haven't slept at all, night after night, it might be time to listen more closely. Because sometimes your heart speaks loudest when everything else is quiet. Number 4. Mild shortness of breath. Eleanor had always taken pride in her independence. At 76, she still climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment without a second thought. But lately, something had changed. Halfway up, she'd have to pause, heart pounding, breath shallow as if she'd just run a mile. "Maybe I'm just out of shape," she told herself, brushing it off with a smile. But the breathlessness didn't stop. It started happening while she folded laundry, watered her plants, even while chatting on the phone. Once it woke her from sleep, an odd, panicked feeling like she couldn't get enough air unless she sat upright. It wasn't normal, and deep down, Eleanor knew it. What she didn't realize was that these moments of shortness of breath weren't about age or fitness. They were about her heart. When the heart can't pump blood efficiently, the lungs have to work harder to compensate. This creates a sensation of breathlessness. Subtle at first, but more persistent with time. Unlike the breathlessness after a jog or workout, this kind creeps in quietly, during the most ordinary moments. Walking to the mailbox, standing at the sink, sometimes even lying down. In some cases, fluid starts to build up in the lungs, a condition known as pulmonary congestion, making it harder and harder to breathe. And the scariest part? Many people, like Eleanor, chalk it up to aging or stress, and never seek help until it's too late. At Elderly Life, we want you to remember, when breathing feels harder without reason, your heart may be whispering that it's in trouble. Don't wait until the whisper becomes a scream. Number 5. Pain or discomfort in the jaw or neck. Ruth was brushing her teeth when she felt it, a strange, dull ache in her jaw. It wasn't sharp, just a nagging discomfort that came and went. She assumed it was from grinding her teeth in her sleep, or maybe an old dental issue flaring up again. But then the ache returned the next day, this time stretching up the side of her neck. It wasn't constant, and it didn't seem serious, so she didn't mention it to anyone. Probably just tension, she thought, rubbing the stiffness away. What Ruth didn't know was that her heart was trying to send a warning. Unlike other parts of the body, the heart doesn't have its own pain receptors. Instead, it shares nerve pathways with areas like the jaw, neck, and even the teeth. So when the heart is in distress, when blood flow is restricted or oxygen is low, it sends signals that the brain may misinterpret as pain in unrelated areas. This kind of referred pain can be deceptive. It may come and go, shift in location, or appear during stress or physical activity. One moment, it's a mild ache in the jaw. The next, a strange pressure in the neck. Because it doesn't feel like classic chest pain, many people ignore it until it's too late. Ruth had no idea that these subtle, seemingly unrelated symptoms could be her heart's cry for help. At Elderly Life, we urge you to pay attention to discomfort that feels unusual or unexplained, especially if it appears with fatigue, shortness of breath, nausea, or dizziness. Sometimes the pain isn't where you expect it, but the danger is very real. Number 6. Tar 6. Dizziness or lightheadedness. It happened while Paul was standing at the kitchen sink. One moment he was rinsing his coffee mug, the next, the room tilted. His vision blurred, and a strange lightness filled his head, like he might float away or collapse right there on the floor. He gripped the counter, closed his eyes, and waited for it to pass. A few seconds later, it did. "Must have stood up too fast," he muttered, convincing himself it was nothing. But it wasn't just once. The dizziness returned, at the grocery store, while gardening, even while sitting quietly on the porch. There was no pattern, no warning, just a sudden wave of unsteadiness that left him shaken every time. What Paul didn't realize was that his heart was struggling to do its job. The heart's main task is to pump oxygen-rich blood to every part of the body, including the brain. When blood flow becomes restricted, the brain doesn't get the oxygen it needs. That's when dizziness strikes. Not from hunger, not from standing too quickly, but from a heart that's falling behind. Unlike the predictable lightheadedness caused by dehydration or fatigue, heart-related dizziness can appear out of nowhere, while you're sitting, standing, or lying down. It may feel like the ground is shifting beneath you, or like your body is about to give out. Many people, like Paul, dismiss these moments as minor, but when paired with other subtle signs, fatigue, shortness of breath, chest pressure, they can be a red flag for something far more serious. At Elderly Life, we remind you, if your world keeps spinning without reason, it's time to stop and listen to your body. Because sometimes the faintest feeling is your heart's loudest cry. Number 7. Tar 6. Dizziness or lightheadedness. It happened while Paul was standing at the kitchen sink. One moment he was rinsing his coffee mug, the next, the room tilted. His vision blurred, and a strange lightness filled his head, like he might float away or collapse right there on the floor. He gripped the counter, closed his eyes, and waited for it to pass. A few seconds later, it did. "Must have stood up too fast," he muttered, convincing himself it was nothing. But it wasn't just once. The dizziness returned, at the grocery store, while gardening, even while sitting quietly on the porch. There was no pattern, no warning, just a sudden wave of unsteadiness that left him shaken every time. What Paul didn't realize was that his heart was struggling to do its job. The heart's main task is to pump oxygen-rich blood to every part of the body, including the brain. When blood flow becomes restricted, the brain doesn't get the oxygen it needs. That's when dizziness strikes. Not from hunger, not from standing too quickly, but from a heart that's falling behind. Unlike the predictable lightheadedness caused by dehydration or fatigue, heart-related dizziness can appear out of nowhere, while you're sitting, standing, or lying down. It may feel like the ground is shifting beneath you, or like your body is about to give out. Many people, like Paul, dismiss these moments as minor, but when paired with other subtle signs, fatigue, shortness of breath, chest pressure, they can be a red flag for something far more serious. At Elderly Life, we remind you, if your world keeps spinning without reason, it's time to stop and listen to your body. Because sometimes the faintest feeling is your heart's loudest cry. Number 8. 8. Mild chest discomfort that comes and goes. Walter didn't think much of the tightness in his chest. It wasn't painful, just a strange pressure that appeared when he climbed stairs or got a little too worked up. After a few minutes of rest, it always faded away. No big deal, he thought, just getting older. But over time, that pressure showed up more often. Sometimes when carrying groceries, other times just walking from the car to the front door. It never stayed long, and it never felt severe. That's what made it so easy to ignore. What Walter didn't realize was that this on and off discomfort had a name, angina, and it was his heart's way of warning him that something was seriously wrong. Angina happens when blood flow to the heart is temporarily reduced, depriving the heart muscle of oxygen. The result is a sensation of tightness, heaviness, or pressure in the chest. Unlike a full-blown heart attack, angina isn't constant. It comes and goes, often triggered by physical exertion or emotional stress, and eases with rest. But here's the danger. Just because it stops doesn't mean it's harmless. Walter's heart was struggling, and each episode of chest discomfort was a silent alarm. At first, it only came with activity. But as the condition worsened, the episodes began creeping in during quieter moments, even while he was sitting still. Many people never connect these dots. They think if the pain isn't sharp or lasting, it can't be serious. At Elderly Life, we urge you to pay attention to recurring chest pressure, even if it's mild or fleeting. Because when your heart starts sending signals, it won't always shout. Sometimes it knocks quietly, hoping you'll answer before it's too late. Conclusion: your heart whispers before it shouts. It wasn't until after his surgery that Henry realized just how long his heart had been trying to warn him. The heartburn he shrugged off, the breathlessness on the stairs, the strange fatigue that clung to him for weeks. They weren't random. They were signals. Clues. Pleas for help from an organ slowly reaching its limit. He thought he was doing okay. He didn't smoke much, he only drank on weekends. He stayed active. Well, sort of. But his diet was full of processed foods. Stress ruled most of his days, and regular checkups had long fallen off his radar. The truth? His heart attack didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of silent damage building over time. At Elderly Life, we believe that every choice matters. The food on your plate, the way you move your body, the boundaries you set for peace of mind. Each decision either builds your heart up or breaks it down. Heart disease doesn't always make a grand entrance. Sometimes it arrives quietly, hidden in a restless night, a missed breath, a sudden wave of exhaustion. But you have the power to change your story before it reaches a breaking point. Start small. Swap fried snacks for fresh fruits. Take a daily walk. Say no when your body needs rest. Quit smoking, cut back on alcohol, and manage your blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar like your life depends on it, because it does. Henry's story could have ended differently. Yours still can. Don't wait for your heart to scream. Listen while it still whispers. Conclusion: your heart whispers before it shouts. It wasn't until after his surgery that Henry realized just how long his heart had been trying to warn him. The heartburn he shrugged off, the breathlessness on the stairs, the strange fatigue that clung to him for weeks. They weren't random.